Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. I make that just gone 10 o'clock, so I'm going to start this webinar now. Today's webinar is going to be on potential COVID-19 related claims for employers. Obviously, this is a very new topic for us, and it's been very interesting looking into it. So I hope you find this just as useful. I want it to be as interactive as possible. So if there is anything you want to ask me, I can't view it throughout, but I'll certainly look as a Q&A or a chat at the end, just to see if there's any comments you want to make, because I want to make it as useful for you as possible. So moving on, Clover HRR are showing you this presentation today, and we are your trusted people advisors here to help in any way we can. There's nearly over 25 of us now around the country, and we have over 200 years experience between us all. So anything you need to know, hopefully we can help you with, and we have specialisms in all different areas, as you can see. But moving on to the topic. I'm Lynn Berman. I will be presenting this webinar today, and I have over 20 years experience within HR, and it's a profession I love and I'm very passionate about. So get the most that you can from this, and obviously this will be on YouTube afterwards if you want to watch it back as well. Again, question and answers, please feel free to comment at the end, but I will ask you to keep muted at the moment just so we can run through the whole presentation in one go. So what will I be going through? The contents of today. We'll look at COVID-19 and the impact on employees in particular, COVID-19 and the impact on employers, and see the difference between the two really. Types of claims that have already started to come about, and I'll give you some information on some statistics that have started to come about through that, and any other potential claims from COVID-19 that we can look out for. And then finally, how employers like ourselves can help their employees and minimise these claims as much as possible. So starting the topic, the pandemic over the last 12 months have affected all society and workplaces alike, and we're going to look and see how it's affected employees in the workplace and some of the issues that they have had to face. So furlough and short-time working has obviously been a huge topic over the last 12 months, and employees have had to deal with being furloughed and the worries this brings to their job security in the future. They've also suffered a decrease in salary sometimes, which has had concerns with managing their household, and the unknown nature of what's next and how they'll be working, and obviously had to, when flexible furloughing came about, be more flexible with when they're in and when they're not. But it has had massive concerns to come in and out of the business, potentially with a pay cut. And moving on, employees have had to potentially manage a drop in salary and therefore reduce their overheads where they can, and take this into effect with their day-to-day spending. Redundancy has obviously been one of the most unfortunate things in a lot of these cases, and a lot of employees have had to experience redundancy and the repercussions this can bring. So financial concerns, applying for new jobs, interviewing again for jobs, and the increase in candidates for that job has been huge as well. They've got more competition. Experiencing low morale in the workplace. So obviously there's been uncertainty throughout in society, and this is it's the unknown of what is next. So this has caused employees to stop communicating potentially with each other and not be as close as they normally are. Home working, as millions of people have had to adjust to home working and life working from home. A lot of households have worked from kitchen tables, dining room tables and sofas, and had to share this area with their family members who are in the same position. And this has caused a great deal of concern and obviously issues in itself. Anxiety issues. So anxiety levels have increased due to the unknown effect of the virus, and it's caused some mental health issues with various people having experienced feelings that they've never experienced before. Childcare issues. So with schools being closed, parents have had to continue with their work as well as trying to homeschool children and get all their technology set up and catered for. A lot of parents who have continued to work at home have had to juggle parenting responsibilities with their jobs, and the pressure has been immense and working hours long. The financial strain, where salaries have been cut or redundancy has taken place, has caused a lot of anxieties within the household and keeping overheads low. Boredom is one where employees have been furloughed and perhaps live on their own or with a partner that has had to go to work, A lot of people have found boredom with the same thing, doing the same thing every day, and not knowing how to occupy their time without their normal day-to-day activities of work. So this has caused a lot of frustration and possible depression and mental health concerns in the worst case scenarios. There's the opposite of overstretched. So a lot of employees have continued work, continued homeschooling, and have took on extra work due to covering employees on furlough or being unwell. And they've found themselves more busy and under pressure than ever, and have been at a risk of burnout here. So they've felt overstretched, but they can't drop anything. And this has led to a lot of frustration amongst some employees. Grief is one of the worst. So some employees have lost loved ones during their pandemic and are grieving for their loss. So we need to be mindful of the impact this could have and offer support to them, whether that be simply having someone to speak to, a mental health referral group, mental health first aiders, or external support or counsellors. On the flip side of this, the employers have had a major impact with COVID-19. So it's useful for us to look at the impact this has had on employers and business owners alike. They've had to kind of try and find new ways of working over the last 12 months and keep their business going, as well as obviously looking after the employees within it. So we're going to look at some of the things, the factors that the employees have had to experience here. A lot of business owners have experienced a huge drop in sales and turnover, while still having the same overheads going out the door. So they've had to decide at each stage what they do with their employees, the business, who they pay, and how they stay in business really. The low workforce morale, they've seen obviously employees suffering here, and have tried to put positive influences in place to support their staff and keep them positive, keeping them communicated with, and wellbeing initiatives that have been put in place to help here and increased also. And we'll talk about this a bit more later. Unfortunately, some employers have had to lose employees and in redundancy. They cannot continue with their employment and their role is no longer needed. This has been extremely difficult, obviously for the employee more than anything, but for the employer to make these decisions that they have to make. Where some employers have tried to avoid redundancy, they've furloughed their employees. So the decision as to who to furlough, for how long, and ensuring communication is kept frequent, this has been extremely challenging for employers to deal with, and it's something they've never had to deal with before on a furlough scheme. So communication channels have had to be improved with new technologies and obviously being taught, such as Zoom, Teams, and other communication channels to keep interaction with your employees and between an employee and colleagues. It doesn't come naturally to all of us at some stage to use these platforms, therefore patience has had to be used and try and get employees functioning as normal as possible in these circumstances. Employees have had worries about the future of their business and whether it will survive during these unprecedented times. So they've took on a lot of concern here of their future and what it looks like. Anxieties have been high with all the unknown parameters of the pandemic, and employees have had to deal with their own anxieties as well as an employer as being a human being, and this is what they've had to deal with at home as well. They've also had to look after their business and their employees, and the concern for their employees and the worries over keeping everyone in the loop and contacted with. With not being in the same room as each other, they've had to ensure their duty of care is still followed to look after their employees and keep them informed throughout. Unfortunately, some businesses have not survived the last 12 months and have had to make some difficult decisions to close. So as well as these, some companies have had a reduction in sales and any finances being earned. So this has caused a lot of concern and worry. And business owners have had to continue to report on a month-by-month, week-by-week basis what the financials are to the board or the investors and shareholders. So, and what they're doing and to cope with the situation. And this has caused a lot of pressure throughout. Where a business is customer facing, obviously you do not want to drop customer service. So employees have had to ensure customers get the good contact, good customer service, and returning customers obviously return, and the reputation remains positive throughout. You do not want to lose good customers throughout this pandemic. And obviously the worst is the business closures for employers where they've had to close the business due to lack of sales, profit, turnover, or the inability to open and keep going. So this year has obviously is expected to bring a surge of litigation cases for COVID, with thousands of UK organisations facing allegations about how they've handled the pandemic. 7 in 10 claims management companies have already received claims relating to COVID-19. And unfortunately, 40% increase in litigation claims overall are expected in the coming year, driven by the COVID-19 related incidents. But litigation relates not only to the alleged safety violations and the negligence during the pandemic, but also from workers who were overworked or believed they were unfairly dismissed. So here's a list of potential claims that have already come about, and this research was taken and conducted by 3GEM between December the 1st and December the 15th, and amongst 3,200 respondents were included, including 200 claims management companies. So you'll see here the claims that have already come through, with the top being 14% employee contracting COVID-19 on the premises. I've also looked at medical negligence claims, coming through to subjective claims such as feeling overworked, underpaid, overtime, anxiety, stress, and leading through to working conditions of PPE, discrimination, workplace safety violation, with the final rank 10 being employee contracting COVID-19 in the line of duty. We have to be mindful of this. Other potential claims when we look at COVID-19 and what could come about in the future, really. The breach of contract when using furlough. So employers have had to ensure they follow all the rules when furloughing their employees and have been communicated with, and it's done correctly, with writing to the employees and inputting all the details into the HMRC correctly. Employers have had to ensure these employees on furlough were paid correctly and at the correct percentage for their salary. Selection for furlough was hard, so to decide who to furlough and why was difficult for employees, and there has been some questions from employees as to why them and not someone else. So we need to make sure we were mindful of the decisions we made then and why we made them. Businesses have had to make obviously some difficult decisions, as I said earlier, about redundancies. So we need to look here at why these outcomes were met, and they need to be documented correctly and the correct procedures followed in order to ensure they'll not be taken into a tribunal in the future. So companies have used HR services and professionals to ensure they minimise the risk in this. With health and safety breaches, the COVID-19 risk assessments have obviously become legislative, and therefore employers have had to increase their knowledge of health and safety around the workplace and put more procedures in place. So there's been a learning curve there for a lot of employees in completing the risk assessment and also making sure it's communicated throughout the workforce. Whistleblowing is where employees have raised concerns, employer concerns, about breaches of policy and concerns as to their conduct, and there is seen as a definite increase in this area over the next 12 months. Health and safety towards pregnant workers has obviously been looked at very heavily and will continue to be looked at. So more regular monitoring and compliance of your pregnancy policy and maternity policy will be needed. And obviously the health and safety rules related to COVID measures put in place here. And again, this is something we can help you with. You need to be mindful of it in the future. A lot of requests will no doubt be coming in to change employees' ways of working. So there is a talk of hybrid ways of working and a mix between home and office working, if this is still suitable for the employer. So employees have got used to a different way of working, will need to adjust back into the old way of working, if that's the way, or into the most productive for the business whilst keeping the employees happy. They also need to ensure they're not discriminating against anyone and picking one person over the other. So ensuring ensuring consistency and fairness across the team. And the policies relating to flexible working are equal to all. So when handling disciplinary and capability issues, procedures still need to be followed. This has been hard over the last 12 months, obviously with not being in the same room. But again, the procedures always need to be followed, with employers might find themselves at risk of potential claims for this during the last 12 months if the procedures haven't been followed correctly. Handling grievance issues. So again, these procedures need to be followed and the grievance policy adhered to for the company. If a grievance has been raised during the pandemic, any potential claims could come about if the grievances haven't been adhered to or followed in any way or ignored, shall we say. Obviously, disability discrimination always needs to be looked at, and reasonable adjustments will always need to be made for disability cases. And employers need to ensure they are consistently compliant here and do all they can in any disability case they have. Long COVID has been apparent during the pandemic and has come about, and employees are still suffering the effects of long COVID for a long time afterwards. So the question surrounds us if long COVID will ever be classed as a disability, as it could remain a debilitating condition for an employee for some 12 months or more. So employers will need to monitor this in their absence reports, and obviously to discuss in any return to work interviews to ensure they are aware and try and help the employee. So how can employers help their employees? What can we do to try and minimise these potential claims, and how the employees are feeling after this pandemic is hopefully over to a certain extent and we can return to some kind of normal? A lot of employers are increasing their wellbeing initiatives that I'm working with and being offered to employees. So this isn't all about financials. This is offering support, guidance, advice, and other ways of having fun in the workplace and looking after an employee's wellbeing, whether it be mental or physical. This is something that certainly we can help you with, and a lot of our clients are starting to look at different ways of doing this. And one way of finding out information from your employees are employee surveys. So find out how they are feeling, whether that be anonymous or named. It's up to you how you feel it will be taken. But as long as you get the maximum uptake and obviously honesty from that survey. Keep communication channels regular. Ensure regular team meetings and inclusivity of all team members. Make sure no one in the room doesn't have a say in what you've got to look for and have an opinion of what you want to change in the future. Be structured on workloads and expectations of the work and ensure the technology is working correctly. So when home working, employees may have IT issues that they need help and support with. So always checking in on them so they can do their job properly and effectively, as this can cause them some stress and anxieties throughout. Check that the procedures are still being followed and no shortcuts taken. So this is in connection with furlough letters, redundancy cases and procedures being met, meetings being followed through, such as payments being made correctly, any disciplining procedures, and obviously the ACAS code of practice being followed with the right to witness, right to appeal, etc. And grievances not being ignored. Fairness and consistency is key here. To communicate future plans to the employees if you can. Try and include some financials and make them feel secure if you can, if this is possible to do so for your business. And deal with any mental health issues in the workplace straight away and put initiatives in place to help, whether that be counselling, helplines, EAP programs, occupational health, or HR support as a regular contact. So to summarise today's webinar, and obviously COVID-19 related claims, things to look out for. Think about what people are doing, assess what work needs doing right now, set priorities, make new objectives and expectations, what need to be met. And before working out how to do it differently, recognise the backdrop to people's current working lives and consider the balance between business needs and individual needs and get that balance right. Think about where people are working and how to support them. Consider providing enhanced broadband or a proper office chair. Create space for collaboration and engagement, such as virtual team meetings or fun evenings and remote cafes. And check in on everyone regularly and anyone that goes under the radar. Note that what's working and what isn't working to ensure you take the best examples with you into the long-term future of your business. Think about when work needs to be done and how that matches people's needs. So some people may still be splitting childcare with a partner, and so they may need to block off certain times throughout their day. Others may need to get ahead at the weekend to allow more breaks in the week. Build a framework that looks at your organisation's needs and each individual's needs to identify work patterns that will suit both parties. And think about how much work needs doing and can be managed at the current time. So some employers need staff to reduce their hours. To save costs, some employees need to work less to juggle their own commitments. And in order to make this work, leaders need to either reduce the workload or find alternative resource here. So expecting people to do the same work in less time sometimes isn't a sustainable option. So I will look at questions now, but I just want to really say thank you for listening to today's presentation, and I hope it has been useful. I've really enjoyed putting this together. It is a topic that obviously is very new in the workplace, and I hope all of you are experiencing good things now and coming out of this. So I'm just going to have a look at Q&A to see if there's anything. Feel free to put anything in now if you want to, or in the chat. Okay, so there doesn't seem to be any questions, but thank you for listening. This will be on YouTube, obviously, after today, on our website, on the Clover website there. But if there is anything also, you can contact me on my email address or a phone number or anyone else in Clover, and we're more than willing to help you. All right. Have a good day all. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.